Good morning. It's the start of another week and the second day of Advent. When I was in church yesterday, one of the verses that was read out was in John 1:14, where John writes, "And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, full of grace and truth. We have beheld his glory, glory as of the only Son from the Father." And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Do you know that is the most phenomenal supernatural event that has ever happened? That God should become flesh. God should be incarnated. That God should lower himself and become human. The great God-man, the supreme fusion of the divine and the mortal. Impossible. Everything in you cries, that's impossible. How could God become a man? How is that possible? It's impossible. And yet it happened. This is the most, I want to call it miracle, but it's just the most amazing, incredible, supernatural act. John himself, when he writes 1 John, the first few verses, if you get a chance to read them today, you can feel him trying to express the wonder of what he experienced. He writes in 1 John, "We saw him, we touched him, he lived among us, we witnessed it, we actually met God in the flesh." The wonder of it still was with him when he wrote those letters. And he says again in chapter 1 of the Gospel of John, "No one has ever seen God. The only Son who is in the bosom of the Father, he has made him known." No one was allowed to see God. If you saw God, you would die because you were mortal and he was God. It couldn't happen. You couldn't do it. There was, the greats of the Old Testament, Elijah and Moses, they weren't allowed to see God because they would have died even though they were great men of God. And the way God communicated with people was through the word sent to prophets and great men of God. But now, everything was going to change. When Jesus came, everything was going to change. The way God communicated with man was going to change radically, because this was in another dimension. This intervention of God into this world. This is something to really dwell on. I don't know how to express it any more powerfully. I don't have the words. Simply, "And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us." This is phenomenal, outrageous, incredible, unbelievable almost. For years I've thought that it was a pity. It's a pity that we make more of Christmas than we make of Easter in celebration, because for many years Easter, the story of the events of the last week of the life of Jesus and his resurrection, are the pivotal points for me, or were the main thrust. But actually the greatest miracle ever was Jesus coming in the flesh. Was God's plan, this phenomenal plan. And for this plan, where for the second half of the, at least of the story of the Old Testament, all the messages, all the communication from heaven to man came through men who were picked out and anointed with the Spirit and given a message to deliver. Great men like Isaiah and Jeremiah, Ezekiel. There is that one man, Daniel, who actually met with an angel or two, and well, certainly one angel. But mostly it was the word of God, the message coming to people to be communicated. But this coming of the Messiah was radically different to that. This was not the message sent to a man. This was the message himself becoming man. This was the message. This was the reality. How to know who the Father was, how to know what he was like for the Son to come. Just amazing. And we think the month before Christmas, the 4 weeks of preparation is a long time. But actually, the preparation started at least 15 or 20 months before, because the first angel sent to Zechariah was sent at least 15 months. You have to do the maths, really, because Elizabeth was 6 months pregnant when Mary went to see her after the angel visited her. And Mary had 9 months to wait before Jesus was born. So we're talking 15 months at least, possibly 2 years, well, 18 months, year and a half, from when that first angel was sent to Zechariah. And they couldn't, God decided not to send the message that the Messiah was coming to a prophet, to a man, but to actually send angels. It was such a big deal. It was such an important event that it was angels that were sent to carry the message, to break into this world's atmosphere and bring their message so nobody could miss it. There are more angels in the story of Christmas than anywhere else in the Bible, really, because it was the event. It is the event, the pivotal event of history. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us, full of grace and truth. We have beheld his glory, the glory as of the only Son from the Father. This is what we're celebrating at Christmas. Think about it, my friend. Think about it and be blessed at the miracle of Christmas. Have a great day. See you tomorrow. Bye.